time today in the center of Beijing when a man walked in the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. I think maybe the second biggest question I get as a prepper, and it's funny because it used to be a lot more so in the past than now, but are preppers just crazy? Like, are you sure you're not just being a little paranoid? You know, that's kind of what it comes down to. Well, we're going to dig into it. We're going to dig into the ideas, what's coming true, what's not coming true, and what are the consequences of being a prepper. Like, it turns out it does come at a cost, and it may not just be a financial cost, but I mean, it could just get you on a lot of lists. You know, I know if you have a prepper podcast, you're probably on a list. And so there are consequences to being a prepper. So let's kind of jump into it. Kevin, are preppers crazy? What's your take? I mean, I look at you and I'm like, yeah, pretty crazy. So,
I mean, yeah, the short answer is yes. You know what I mean? We're all crazy people. If you're listening to this podcast, you're already a crazy person, you know?
do you have a tinfoil hat in the closet, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
You're
I'm ready to go. It's all shaped to my head. I have one for the whole family. They're all set aside.
Yeah.
Ready to go. Yeah. I mean, it's too late. They already scanned our minds from space.
It doesn't matter.
Whatever, dude. I can put it on now. But
the military, and they sampled their DNA and everything. And
they take your blood and your fingerprints. It's all on file.
All right. Oh man, that can't be good. So that's one of the things. So that's what I see is one of the big takes is, you know, preppers are just paranoid. They're hoarding. They're causing problems for the rest of us. And now one of the things I think is I feel like there's less of a stigma now because a lot of things are kind of playing out.
Right.
Like one of the big things I always saw was, and I found it hard to believe, was the colleges were saying, oh, it doesn't matter how much money we print, there won't be inflation because as long as you have a robust economy, it doesn't really matter. And it turns out that was just a myth, that printing money, and it was people from like Harvard and Yale had economists that were like, don't even worry, just print as much as you want and there's no consequences. And all of us were like, oh no, that sounds like a really bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an economist. I've taken a class, you know, an economy class. And that one of the basic things is if there's more of something, it's less valuable. I don't understand. I mean, that's one of the basic parts of economics. Whatever.
Right. That was the thing. And then all of a sudden, I guess we were wrong. And I got to say, it held out longer than I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were able to print. I mean, if you think of between 2009 and now, we were just printing money like crazy, just boom, boom, boom. And there weren't really consequences until around 2020. All of a sudden, like that's all of a sudden when the curve went like way up.
Right. Well, people stopped working and we stopped having a robust economy. And then all of a sudden, oh, maybe they were right, you know?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden
can't do it and then tank the economy at the same time.
So I feel like when things like that happen, though, you're like, oh, look, I'm vindicated. You know, yeah, I've been saying, hey, there's going to be inflation. Maybe store some food, maybe stock up on supplies just to beat inflation. People were like, oh, that's crazy, whatever. What about when like COVID hit? I mean, people were like, hey, there could be like a big pandemic and it could be hard to go out to stores and whatever. And there were a lot of people prepping for that. I mean, if you watch that show Doomsday Preppers, people were like, oh, there could be something like the Chinese flus and, you know, whatever.
Right.
And everyone was like, dude, you're kind of crazy. This is America. We have vaccines. We all get a flu shot. Everything's good. And then COVID happened. And they were like, well, yeah. And then, you know, I mean, remember, you were like a complete nut job. I don't mean you personally, but people were viewed as a complete nut job if they had any thoughts about aliens or Area 51. I mean, you were straight Looney Tunes.
Right. That's crazy talk.
That's crazy talk. And then all of a sudden, the White House is like, well, there may be UFOs. We're
not going to tell you.
Investigating them. We're not really sure. And it was just like more and more. They're like, well, that conspiracy. All right, that one was true.
That one panned out.
And then, is the government like putting you on lists and then, that kind of thing. You were like, oh, that's probably not happening. You're just paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden we're all like on lists.
Right. The government is not mass surveilling their citizens. They're not going to, they wouldn't do that.
Right, I mean, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's against the law. They can't.
And then that movie Vendetta came out and we're like, wait a minute, who knows? So what's your take on that? Now, Kevin, have you seen so what's your take? Like COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are people justified? I mean, were you helped because you were prepared for COVID?
I'll tell you this. One, I wasn't out like fighting people at the grocery store over the last box of pasta.
You have toilet?
That happened. That stuff was happening. People were fighting over rice and shit,
Did you have toilet paper?
I did not have toilet paper.
Oh,
but
Kevin.
I am a grown man and I do have a garden hose, I know how to handle myself.
A homemade bidet, right?
I've been pooping in the woods for 40 years. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't.
You had no tree back there, and
that.
things were,
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, when we're looking this stuff up, you said you came across an article.
Yeah, so I did. I was, I was actually searched that. Our prepper's crazy, and so Psychology Today. Specifically, I mean, psychologists always calling people crazy.
What they do.
So these are the three things I got from that article there.
All right.
Prepping beliefs encompass a pessimistic worldview that doom is imminent. People are uncooperative and resources are limited. So this is what preppers believe. They say, right? The crisis in 2020 have demonstrated that cynicism about human nature is largely unwarranted, while concerns about resource availability are legitimate.
It's funny because I kind of went the other way on that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of, as a prepper, I don't think that least resources are really that limited, but I think that my government is so corrupt that they could fuck up anything pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I would say incompetent, corrupt.
Yeah, that
this is another word.
Those are words I'd use.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I mean, I think I think that when they say that the crisis demonstrated cynicism about human nature was unwarranted, I think that they weren't in the same stores that I was at. People were acting crazy.
You did see crazy.
And when you were sitting at home and, flipping through whatever YouTube and stuff, it was like video after video of like people in grocery stores losing their shit, in stores and parking lots losing their shit. Suicide shot through the roof during the pandemic. You know what I mean? Alcoholism skyrocketed. I never was like thinking about there's going to be some like natural disaster or some event and I'm going to have to worry about my friends killing themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe I wasn't, enough of a cynic about it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's one of the things is that we kind of, we're in a society where everything kind of is provided for us, right? I mean, available to us. I mean, maybe they're not giving it out for free, but you can go find anything. You can go to the grocery store and anything. But one of the things that like really concerns me is like the government is paying farmers not to grow food. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound logical and whatever, and they're like, oh, scarcity. One of the big things I'm coming across now is our whole food system is like so artificially, the prices are very artificial because the government is subsidizing production and everything like that. what we see on the shelves isn't a true reflection of what it costs to make and get stuff,
Right.
to the store.
Hmm.
Like you guys have heard me talk lately, about how much it cost me to make a turkey. And, I inefficiently raised turkeys and they ended up costing me almost $200 a piece. And that's not even counting the labor to butcher them, which was my labor, but it's still time and effort, right? But I talked to people who knew what they were doing and they were like, yeah, at best I can do a 25-pound turkey at like $125,
Hmm.
But I go to Walmart and they're like, oh, 89 cents a pound for turkey. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, that doesn't seem right. Now, I understand there's things like they call it loss leaders, they
Hmm.
get you into the store because you come by the
Right.
turkey cheap and then you buy stuffing and butter and, whatever, Pop Tarts or whatever people buy for Thanksgiving. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, I understand getting somebody in the store, but the prices aren't really a true reflection of what it actually costs to make these things. And you're saying, well, Chuck, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because our government is propping up the economy. I mean, and they're propping it up by printing money and basically paying it out as handouts to farmers and things like that of, hey, if you grow this, we'll give you this big tax refund or we'll give you, all these things that make it worthwhile. I mean, are you seeing that? Does that sound accurate or
Yeah. I mean, if you're asking if I think that the government has their hands in everything,
and they
including all the
should?
things they shouldn't be involved in, yeah, I
Yes.
think so.
Okay. All right.
We'd probably be eating a lot more eggs if, things cost what they actually cost.
Eggs are incredible, edible, fun. I saw a lot of commercials in marketing growing up.
Hmm.
Saying, all right, you shouldn't discount the egg. That's all I'm saying. All right. So prepping for, food, we see that is a little sketchy, right? The food supply, getting it to the person. Um, how about the on-time delivery? I mean, that's always one of the big prepper things. What's your take on that? They say like on demand or on time delivery system where basically a grocery store has like 3 days worth of food.
Hmm.
Um, and if the trucks stop coming, all of a sudden we end up with shortages on things.
Yeah.
Is that
I
is
mean,
that
I think we
warranted
saw that. I think we saw that play out,
with COVID?
in a sense with COVID, not because trucks weren't showing up, like they had the 3-day supply, but so many people were in there buying for a month or, a couple weeks
That it wiped out the
that it
system.
wiped out the store. Right. And you
So
were
you're
really
saying
limited.
that preppers actually caused the problem.
Yeah. No. What I'm saying is
I got you there.
I hear this a lot. I hear
Okay.
this line a lot that preppers are like hoarding stuff and they're like causing shortages for everybody else. But the thing is, we all already had our stuff. You know what
Right.
I
We
mean?
didn't have to go
I
to the
wasn't in it. I wasn't at the grocery store having a fist fight over,
no.
over the last can of beans. You know what I mean? I wasn't that guy. I was the guy that was sitting at home, eating.
You were wiping your butt and eating food. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. All right.
But I
That's
do hear that shit a lot though.
yeah.
That preppers are hoarding stuff. They're causing shortages for other people, and if biblically, if you think about the story of what was it, Jacob in Egypt, and he had a prophecy, told the king that there's going to be a shortage of food and store an extra quarter of food up for the next 4
Yep.
years. I mean, that didn't really cause mass starvation while they were getting ready for it.
No.
It prevented mass starvation when the famine actually hit.
But you're using the Bible to justify prepping. That sounds like a dangerous road, Kevin.
Well, honestly, I hear a lot of Christians talk bad about prepping, that, you
Yes.
should
God will
have faith in
provide.
God and
Why would
God
you
will
worry about
provide. Yeah.
it? Yeah. If you had a little more faith, Kevin,
Hmm.
then you wouldn't have these problems.
I know it.
Now, let's talk about some of so, all right. So, security. Do you think, let's talk about that. Let's go down that road a little bit. The Second Amendment. People were, oh, if we elect Kamala Harris, she's going to come after the guns and confiscate them and whatever. Now, I got to say, I mean, I know you're not always the biggest fan of Trump. People are probably shocked to hear me say that, but
I'm sure they're
shocked
unaware
to
of
hear
my
it. Right. But when he got elected, he appointed people to the Supreme Court who, I'm sure a lot of people have opinions on what happened in the Supreme Court or whatever, but that actually protected the Second Amendment quite a bit with his nominations. They did buy some time for the Second Amendment, if you will. I'm not saying that your guns are safe because of it. I'm saying it bought a little time. And I think that mattered. I think that affects things. And I guess the reason I bring that up is they say, oh, guys, you guys are so paranoid. You think they're just out to grab your guns. Well, why do you need your guns is what I always hear. Why do people even need guns, Kevin? I mean, is that just crazy or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not only preppers that have firearms. I know a lot of people that I work with that have casually mentioned that they have a firearm near their house in case somebody breaks in. They have cameras on their front door so that they can check when they're not home and their wife's home alone. They can make sure, that the only people going up to the front door are the people that it should be. I know people that lock their windows and they lock their doors before they go to bed at night. I don't think being safe and conscientious is a crazy thing to do. At the bare minimum, as a prepper, I would expect that you have a firearm in the house with ammo, more than you need.
But you don't need like a black one, right? Like not a black gun.
No, just get the wood stock. It's the same gun. What I mean? I don't know why people lose their shit over this. It's a funny one to me. I don't know.
All right.
But I mean, you can get a hunting rifle with a black stock or a walnut stock or whatever, and it's the same hunting rifle, But
yeah. Hey, have you seen people do the AR-15s and they get the nice wood hardware?
Yeah,
they
look good too.
Grip and the stock and the handguard or like
I like the way they look too. But I mean, that's okay. That one's okay. They won't seize that one, I'm sure.
Right. Well, I think that when the reason people on the left might feel a little safer is because traditionally the AK, the favorite gun of the left, the AK-47 always had a wood stock.
Right.
They were like, so why would we go to, black?
I mean, a firearm with firearm with a wood stock has never helped out like genocides or anything like that. So
that's way safer.
That's okay. Yeah.
Right.
That's good. No, actually, this is getting a little off topic, but I did listen to somebody and he made a valid argument about Kamala Harris, like not seizing the guns and things like that. And he was saying it was because she's not planning on seizing guns. What she views as guns is one thing. She's talking about assault rifles, and that's a different thing altogether. So when she says she's not planning on taking people's guns, she actually believes that because she's not talking about guns. She's talking about firearms. So that actually made a lot of sense that she might think that she's telling the truth when she says things like that.
That's kind of like when you didn't have sex with that woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but what does is mean? What's the definition of is?
Depends on what your definition of is.
Yeah. I told my wife when that happened that, when the president does something, it makes it legal. It's okay. So that means that getting a blowjob is not cheating. And she disagreed with me.
She didn't go with that.
Yeah, she didn't understand, I guess. I didn't make myself clear about it. But
you need to go back and revisit that argument. Or you have a severe problem.
Well, I mean, the other option is this. We're given unalienable rights by the Constitution, right?
All right.
So self-incrimination. So if my wife asked me if I cheated, I can plead that it's an unalienable right. So that didn't fly either. I don't know what. Apparently, I'm not really good at these arguments because
I would never revisit this episode because I don't think it would help you. I'm just saying, when you're like, hey, I made a really good point today, I wouldn't bring this up.
No.
No.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So the bottom line is there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and people are like, oh, preppers are crazy to think this and be prepared for it, such as food shortages, such as lack of medicine, right? Getting to the shelves, inflation, being afraid of that. It's one of the big things. One of the big things we always talk about is EMPs, right? Oh, Iran, China, Russia, hating America. People are like, oh, that's crazy. Well, it's funny because that was crazy like 8 years ago.
Right.
And now,
right. Now
like,
people are developing EMP
maybe,
weapons.
Right. Maybe, but probably not. And it's never happened before. Kevin, has there been an EMP?
Not that I'm aware of.
We haven't had an EMP attack, or, we maybe, yes, we've maybe had some cyber attacks against our country, but did it shut down the entire grid completely, at least that we're aware of? I mean, because I would argue that possibly that rolling blackout that we had back in the, 90, whenever the heck it was.
Yeah, it was
Northeast.
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Early 2000s, I think. But I would argue that could have been related to a terror attack, but whatever. Officially, those things aren't. So really, we could just be crazy. I'm just saying that's possible.
Right.
But all signs point to not likely, is what I would say. Now, let's talk about some of the consequences of prepping.
All
right. So what are the negatives to being a prepper that might discourage somebody from going down this road, Kevin?
Well, it can be a little costly. It can cost a little bit of extra money that you might not, have spent that week.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the big things, like, preppers buy a lot of extra food. Is that's correct? That's what you see on the list?
I've heard that. I've heard stories about this.
Right. So is it possible? Now, I'm just posturing here, but is it possible that I buy a lot of food and I store it and I eat it maybe a year later, and that food, I actually beat inflation?
Yeah, I mean, that can of beans and that can of soup is going to be less expensive today than it will be next month.
When I bought it for 89 cents and now it's $1.89 at the store, but I'm still eating it today, I might have beat you. But you could also make an argument that I could have gone out with that dollar and done something investing that the market just
would have returned more than 200% in
possible
a year. Yeah.
Bullets, same thing. I could have invested in precious metals like lead, and those go up all the time. So, all right. All right. That's one thing. Now, another thing that comes to mind when I think of consequences of prepping is you might find yourself on a government list. Have you heard of that happening?
Yeah, I have. I have heard of that.
You have heard of that. And that's not good. Now, government lists. All right. So I know when I put stuff on Facebook, I feel like Facebook knows who I am. Like, deep in their heart.
Yeah.
They know. They're like, this guy, he's a little right wing. Like, anything I post, they're like, no, we're going to check that. I don't think that's going to be accurate. And I'm like, oh, I went to the park with the wife. Look at us holding hands. And they're like, nope, we fact check that. Nope, didn't happen.
Didn't
happen. That wasn't you. That wasn't the park. You're just trying to, scam with some kind of location services here. That's more typical. All right. So Facebook, I know when I post videos on YouTube, YouTube maybe is less likely to share them if they don't kind of go along with the theme that YouTube is trying to project. However, some things do work out. Some things work out on YouTube. Remember, you guys want to like and subscribe and comment, that stuff.
Yeah, as long as we don't show pictures of firearms. I think we're usually
or firearms or talk about firearms.
I mean, now that's it. It's over.
Freedom, or,
this
we don't badmouth China, or any of these things, right? That comes at a consequence. If we just talked about like inappropriate sex, YouTube channel would be like number one,
Right.
number
Right.
one with a bullet, right? That's
Mhm.
but I think too, maybe that's what people are interested in. Maybe they're not interested in guns and hating China. Maybe people, right, just want to see naked chicks on the internet.
Yeah, maybe we should just change this whole show platform around.
From now on, I think our screen covers should be like a chick with her shirt like half open and just
Right.
leaning
Like things
forward.
are
And people will be like, wait, I was going to click that one. We'll get those clicks, and then
Mhm.
they'll open it up and see me and Kevin and be like, ooh,
what a disappointment. When do the
that's a
girls show up?
disappointment. That does happen, right? One of the girls, they're just later in the video. You guys got to hold out to the end. It's somewhere around the 40-minute mark. That's
Mhm.
usually when, they drop in. And we'll do a couple of flashes of the, quick edits in there. No, maybe
Yeah,
not.
no, I think that's a good idea.
That's a good
Now,
idea.
one
That'll
of the other
be
ones
good.
that we were talking about was one of the other drawbacks that had
Yeah,
Slow Burn
negative
had
of being a
mentioned
prepper.
is
Yeah.
storage space.
Yeah.
You know, we've all, I don't know if all of us, but I think most people have seen the inside of like hoarders' houses. You know what I mean? Like ones that really get into it, and you have to kind of like walk paths through each room, and that's all the space available.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff happens, and that's like a mental illness. You know what I mean? That ain't that's not like a normal, a normal prepper doesn't do that sort of stuff. I'm not saving newspapers from the 80s, and old magazines. So, but storage space is at a premium, especially if you're in like an apartment complex or you live in an
Yes.
urban area with a smaller house. Storage space, you see storage lockers all over over the place. And people have those things packed.
I know, and they just store stuff for years, and it's weird because you're like, dude, you realize that the money you're paying each month, you could
Right.
like repurchase all these items,
all that stuff.
whenever
You
you need.
moved 5 years ago and you still have a storage space full of the stuff that you're holding, until you got settled. But
And it turns out at a yard sale, you're talking about like $70 worth of stuff half the time,
Right.
Go.
Right. You could put all that stuff out in the front lawn and put a yard sale sign up. You're right. And you maybe be able to buy a pizza by the time you're done selling
Right.
it all.
Pizza and beer at the end of the day, right?
Right.
But yeah, no, that's definitely, so storage is a thing. And also, like, it's not just the space of storage. You run the risk of products getting damaged. One, things have a certain shelf life, right?
Mhm.
We all know that the long-term prepper food, there's a lot of videos out there that kind of taste like cardboard, or the quality of the food is not that great, that it lasts that long and whatever.
Mhm.
So these things, it's a lot of it's true, right? I mean, a lot of it is, it's not ideal. It's not a perfect situation. And you run the
I've eat-
risk of like mice and that kind of thing,
Right.
taking
Right. And I mean, eating
water.
MREs is not like it costs as much as going out to a nice restaurant to eat an MRE, and not as good.
Right. Right. So there's some negatives there, some drawbacks. I see that. What about firearms? People spend a lot of money on firearms.
They're not cheap, are they?
They are not cheap. And going out and practicing, that costs, right? When it's 50 cents a bullet, that's something, when you're out there shooting. That adds up pretty quick. A day at the range, you burn through 400 rounds, 500 rounds, 1,000 rounds, whatever you do. I don't know how you do it. One of my big things is I always, when I'm shooting, is I make sure that I like shoot, and then I go off the target, and then I go back up, so that I kind of get that practice of quickly acquiring a target every time. Because a lot of, because otherwise, if I just like, oh, I'm dead on, and I just pull the trigger 100 times, and I'm like, look, I got 100 bullseyes. Well, yeah, but did you gain anything for that 50 cents a round?
Right.
You got to make sure of that. I feel like we need more episodes on talking about shooting, Kevin. Why are we not talking about guns a lot more?
Because they always get pulled off of YouTube.
Oh, right. Sorry, that is why. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's, at least you're thinking ahead, right? All right. So guns, firearms, security, that can come at a cost.
Mhm.
It does put you on a list. It does kind of show that you're a little paranoid, but maybe justifiably paranoid is all I'm willing to say.
Right.
Um, what about when things like Helene happened, North Carolina here? You know, we had the big hurricane. Things come in and wipe everything out. Well, one, you kind of lose some of your preps, but the people who did have extra, being able to help their neighbors, that's kind of cool, Kevin.
That was a big plus. I did see that there are a lot of issues with getting clean water,
Yes.
access to clean water, and that happened in Spain too. A lot of people haven't kind of glossed over that when there was a huge flood in Spain, and it
Okay.
was days before people had access to clean drinking water. The government didn't show up when they're supposed to show up. They're late to the party, and a lot of people. I don't know if people got sick. I don't know what happened, but I know a lot of people were worried about access to drinking water.
Right. I think that's one of the things that people don't quite catch is that, it turns out the government isn't really as ready to help. And that's one of the things that we're starting to see.
Hmm.
I mean, it sucked that, people don't have flood insurance. Turns out that's not a normal thing if you don't live in a flood zone, right? If you go to the planning and stuff, and basically a mortgage company doesn't require flood insurance unless you live in a known kind of floodplain kind of thing.
Hmm.
If it's not like 100-year, less than 100-year probability, they don't require it. And that wipes people out. And that really, and that's another thing, is like financially prepping, planning for things like that. Now, obviously, hindsight, oh, well, that's the one. How do you pick, right? We always talk about, like, do I buy EMP shield because that's what I'm afraid of? Or, do I buy that, whatever it is Glenn Beck always is trying to sell, where they're going to steal your mortgage, right? They're going to go take your house deed or whatever, and
Yeah.
get another mortgage on it.
Hmm.
Or, and all these things could happen, right? All these things could happen, but it's like, well, which one's going to happen to me? Was it flood insurance that I should have bought? Was it escaping the
Identity theft.
country
Was
and
it?
going to another country because my government was going to turn corrupt? Or
Hmm.
was it I should have bought a lot of extra food because inflation's going to go crazy? Should I have started raising rabbits because they're going to ban meat? I mean, that was a thing like 5-6 years ago. California was getting all crazy. We don't
Hmm.
like people eating meat. We're going to put a stop to it. That's where the big push on like eating bugs and that kind of stuff came out. But there was some like legitimate arguments that kind of put that fear, like, hey, it could go this way.
Right.
And it just, like, which way is society going? There's a lot of talk about, again, about, I would say about 5 years ago, Pelosi and stuff, they were talking about crazy stuff like taking over people's 401ks and using that money because only rich people have money stored up there and whatever. And they were like, oh, that's an option. Oh, it was right after the whole Greece government collapse where they kind of
Oh
skimmed
yeah.
off people's bank stuff. Then they
Uh-huh.
were like, oh, that kind of thing could happen here. And maybe we kind of just take the retirement, because it's only rich people that have retirement saved. So maybe
Yeah.
you put your money there and we steal it from you. And that's the thing. Like, you have to decide. And honestly, how can we worry about a nonstop job, a nonstop everything going on in our life, and study every aspect of the social environment and know, what we need to prepare for, right? Like,
Right.
oh, this is the one that's going to happen to me, whatever, identity theft, or, whatever, changing your passwords daily for, whatever, to make sure they're not, maybe I have 42 passwords in a little book that I carry around and,
Hmm.
update because, my one password on the internet, it's just nonstop, the stuff that we have to worry about. I mean, it gets kind of crazy.
Hmm.
That's why people like with the phone where you can just have your little 6-digit code kind of signs you in everything and just whatever. But then the problem is when you lose the phone or that goes away, you're just like, but my point is it can be overwhelming, right? And that is part of why we do this show is kind of, hey, look, we did the research. This is what's going on here. Now, it's cool that you can take it or leave it. You don't have to say, well, Chuck's, really worried about EMPs. You don't have to be like, that's the one I'm paranoid about. But I laid out a case and you can make a decision. When COVID was coming and we talked about vaccines or whatever, I guess we're not allowed to say that word, right? That kind of thing. That kind of stuff. You just take the information that you get everywhere. It's one more thing that people, take information on. And, that's how it is, right? You need to find people you trust and you need to kind of take the information, take everything else you're seeing everywhere else and combine it. And, the more diverse the things you're exposed to are, I think the better off you're going to be. I think that's really the best play is to, expose yourself to a lot and see. But, maybe don't just watch like mind numbing things, maybe kind of things that are going to expose you. But honestly, good entertainment is good too. Watching things that make you happy. There's nothing wrong with being happy, right, Kevin?
That's right. That's right. Now, one of the other things that I saw come up a few times when I was researching this podcast about whether or not peppers are crazy. One of the things that came up that doesn't worry me at all is preppers are don't worry about inequity. In other words, preppers are assholes because they're poor people that can't afford to prep. What do you think of that? Is that something that you're ever concerned about?
Kevin, here's my take on that. I prepare so I can take care of people that I care about. All right. Now, maybe I'm kind of selfish and maybe that's just my immediate family. But the more abundance I have, the more I can help people out as, it expands around me. Maybe I have lots of water and neighbor's stuff goes out and I can go over and lend a hand. Maybe your neighbor loses a job and you have all that long-term food, or maybe just an abundance of money and you can go out and buy a couple bags of groceries and go drop them off. I don't know. I think that I find my experience is when you have stuff, you're a lot more willing to share. You could definitely make an argument that, once you get in that hoarder mindset of there's never enough, I guess people, but I find it's weird. I don't take preppers as coming from a place of fear and panic like I do people who kind of just watch kind of mainstream news and stuff. To me, like when I see all these people crying about the election and, oh my gosh, the end of the world, that's fear and panic.
Right.
I feel like, now, again, this is my approach. And I could see how you could make an argument that preppers are scared and paranoid. Like I see how you get there, but I feel that when I have supplies and I'm able to handle it, I'm not afraid anymore. Right. If I walk into a sketchy neighborhood and I have a gun and the sketchy people don't have a gun, then I'm not really going from a position of fear typically, right? And the same idea, right? If I have a lot of food and food is running out, I'm not in a position of fear where I'm scared. Or at least if I have a garden or I know how to hunt and fish and do all these cool things, I'm like, I got this, if things go bad. Now, I'm not saying, oh, I'm 1,000 times better and I'll never run out of food. I'm not saying that. But the more I'm in a place of I'm okay. If I'm a guy who makes $500,000 a year and my bills are $100,000 a year, I know I have plenty of money. I'm not worried, right? I'm just giving you extreme examples. And I come across somebody who, hey, gee, I just got wiped out because I don't have my money for my rent. I do everything right all the time. I just, all of a sudden I got laid off and my boss just didn't even give me my last paycheck. And I was counting on that. It's a lot easier for me to say, hey, you know what? Let me help you out. Let me do it, because I'm not coming from a place of fear. And I think that's what the whole prepping thing is all about, is I'm now secure, so I don't have to react or be desperate. I mean, that's one of my big things, is a lot of preppers are afraid of the government kind of thing. And I don't know that afraid is really the right word, but maybe don't trust the government. A lot of preppers don't trust the government. But when I have guns and food and I own my land, or I'm not desperate with credit cards or counting on a government check coming every week that's going to make the difference, it takes the fear away. And that's kind of, what it comes down to. It makes it so that I can say, all right, you know what? The government probably isn't going to come take over everybody's house if everybody's house has an AR-15 in it.
Right.
That's a deterrent, and it removes the fear. And I think that's really what prepping comes down to. And that's why it's a benefit in my mind, right? That's why I see it as a good thing, is it's all about removing the fear. And it just takes away that scarcity. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because I know a lot of people get anxiety about stuff like that, especially, they watch the news, they get a good hour worth of like fear mongering into their day every single day. And, I mean, honestly, you'd be a lot better off just not watching the news, but, people get this anxiety about food shortages, or, crime going through the roof, or, all these terrible things that are happening everywhere, natural disasters. And you don't have to worry about that if you're prepared for it. You don't have to have anxiety about, terrible things happening if you're prepared for those terrible things.
No, I mean, I think that's it, though. That is the gist of prepping, is it removes the fear. And when you don't have fear, you can make controlled decisions and take control of your life. And that's what it comes down to. When you're in charge and you're making the calls, I think things get a lot better. So that's what I got. You guys have show ideas, questions, concerns, you can email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Again, I'd really appreciate if you guys all hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That always helps out. We love comments. We love hearing from you in the emails. You guys have things you want to know about. We'll try and dig down into it. So with that, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.